It is well to remember that there are 3 short-range pieces in chess: the pawn, the king and the knight, and 3 long-range pieces: the bishop, the queen and the rook. And it's no secret that the most highly valued pieces on the chessboard are the long-range pieces, because they can do more and they can contribute to play on both sides of the board. Whereas the knight, king and pawn are slow-moving, and actually they like play concentrated in one area. Now, my final game on this DVD is an excellent strategical performance by black. It comes from a tournament played in the United Arab Emirates in 2008. Playing white is a guy called Monir Hossein, and playing black is a person called Javed Mohammed, who displays excellent strategical understanding throughout the whole game. Right, now white kicks off with knight f3 and follows up with g3. This is an opening called the King's Indian attack. It's a most solid way to start the game. It's actually recommended in a lot of books as the ideal opening for the club player or beginner to take up. But I'm not so sure about that, because invariably King's Indian attack games are extremely complex. They're not at all simple to play or understand. The board is cluttered full of pieces for a long time, and correct decision making is not simple in positions of this type. So I'm not at all sure whether this is the right way for the beginner or novice to handle playing with the white pieces. Yes, white does have a standard attacking plan in the King's Indian attack, but it's not at all easy to carry out. The problem for white is black has too many good ways to get a reasonable position against white's slow opening idea. And in this game, Mohammed has chosen one of the most effective. First of all, he's put a brick wall in front of the bishop on g2. The bishop really does not like the pawn chain that black has set up in this position, because black's pawns on d6, d5 and c6 deny the bishop activity. This is exactly what a bishop does not like. After that, black continues to develop very, very quickly. All the pieces stream out. You see white's idea is so slow in the opening, he doesn't stop black in any way from developing. And after 6 moves, black has already got a very reasonable position. He's got a solid centre and easy development for his pieces. So white now has to strike back in the centre, and does so with e4, another typical King's Indian attack move. Black takes, white recaptures, and now a very interesting move, bishop b4, and this is a purely strategical move. If we go back, what other moves have been seen in this position? Well, I know that bishop c5 is a very common idea, and that can't be bad. The bishop comes to a very active square and eyes the pawn at f2. I'm doubtful white can get any advantage at all against this move. Going back, if black is feeling slightly more modest, he can of course put the bishop on e7. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a perfectly solid approach. It would suit players who don't want to take any sort of risk at all in the opening, but are happy to content themselves with just a nice quiet position with no weaknesses. But bishop b4, what about that? A very strange and interesting idea, because when I saw this for the first time, I immediately thought, well, can't that bishop be attacked with moves like c3 or a3, and after that doesn't black waste time? Well, I think black's plan is a lot deeper than it looks at first sight. Now let's just have a look what happens if white does attack the bishop. If white plays c3, okay, now the problem with c3 is that it weakens the square d3, and black has a very obvious path for his knight on d7 to come to d3. So for instance, when white plays c3, black simply drops away, white hits the bishop, black drops away again, and I think black is now really thinking about ideas such as knight c5 and then knight d3. We'll see something similar to this happen in the game. A knight settles on d3, a black knight, and white doesn't like it at all. Of course, white can play this way. Going back to bishop b4, obviously a3 is also a move, but then black plays a very surprising move, bishop takes d2. And amazingly, I think white is probably dropping this e-pawn. He can't take with the knight, so if he takes with the queen, we go knight takes e4. and if he goes queen e3, we might even be able to grab the knight on f3 and just move back with an extra pawn. Admittedly, white has two nice bishops in this position, but there's no doubt about it. Black has an extra pawn, and it's not difficult. It's not easy for white to get that pawn back. So the point is that bishop b4, going back to the game now, gives white plenty to think about. It's a new idea in a well-trodden position, and well, I don't know, if you have to play against the King's Indian attack on many levels, you could do worse than employ this idea, I think. Well, anyway, white played h3 in the game, and that didn't bother black unduly. He just dropped back with bishop h5. If white wants to play g4 in this position, black says that's fine by me, because you're weakening your king side. So black isn't worried by g4, and white plays rook e1. A normal move, but once again, the problem with the King's Indian attack, again, it's a very routine opening. A lot of players just play the moves by rote. They don't actually think of what they're doing. Well, if we now think about that plan of putting something on d3 in this position, we first of all note that white has actually pinned his rook there with rook e1. He's actually pinned it, so probably in the very near future he wants to play c3. But then, you know, this plan gains in strength, and I just don't like rook e1. I mean, going back, is there anything better? Well, probably white could play a move like a4 in this position. Then black probably castles. Both sides are comfortable, but white still has this problem of should he play c3 or not to resolve. Don't know. Should he? I'm not so sure. Anyway, rook e1 was played in the game, and black brought his queen out to c7, queen e2, castles. The queen comes up to c4, an unnatural looking move, leading from the front. I mean, we know that exposing the queen early in the game is not such a good idea, so black's now looking for a way to take advantage of this. White now goes c3, and black does take advantage of the queen idea by playing b5. Queen comes back to e2, bishop e7, queen f1. White is really struggling to find a plan in this position, but for black it's crystal clear. He's now thinking about focusing on the d3 square, as I said. c3 did not come without drawbacks. Each pawn move in a game of chess has to be considered with care, and black's plan, which is very difficult to stop, is actually just to put that knight in on d3 and watch white start to suffer. And this is exactly what happened. White took the bishop on e7. Black recaptured. White tried to eject the powerful knight by playing rook e3, but he runs straight into a tactic. Bang! Knight takes b2. It turns out that if bishop takes b2, the knight on d2 is unprotected. So again, black is winning a pawn in this position. And no matter how hard white wriggles, and he wriggled with g4 and then queen e2, black is still winning a pawn. And Mohammed continued with queen d6. I think just going back, I also like knight a4 here. This seems perfectly reasonable to me. And if white goes h4, trying to chase the bishop off the board with h5, then black just plays h5 himself. And if g5, knight d7. And there's really no compensation for the lost pawn here. White is just a pawn down for nothing. So going back to the game anyway, Mohammed continued with a tactical move, queen to d6. White went h4, h5, g5, and this time black put his knight in on g4. Rook f3, knight a4. The devil moves out, and white is struggling. Rook g3, f5. Very, very sharp. I mean, it's pretty clear to me this chap who's playing black is an extremely sharp player. There was no need to lash out like this. He could simply have played b4. I think what Mohammed is worried about is that the knight on g4 might get trapped in this position with a move like f3. But with queen c5 check available, there's really no danger that might happen. So, for instance, after b4, white may take, black simply recaptures. Bishop f3 perhaps, then we improve the position of our knight, coming into c3, The white queen must move, and now I think black simply takes on a2. And really, this is a winning position for black. He's got all his pieces in excellent positions. He's got, importantly, rook and queen, major pieces, actively placed on the open file, and he's got a lovely passed pawn on b4. So I think that would have won as well. But going back to the game, of course, f5 is much sharper to a degree, but Mohammed's breaking the rules here. He's got a one position, he should keep it simple. But you know, maybe this guy is just an incredibly sharp player and he wants complications come what may. The danger is, of course, he's now opened up the g file for white's rook. But nevertheless, okay, on with the show. G takes f6, queen takes f6, and now white played knight f1, really just to let his bishop out on c1. Queen h4, winning a pawn, looks very strong. f3, this is the move white is banking on. The knight seems to have no moves, given that it's pinned against the bishop on g6. But black seems to have it all under control when he plays knight takes c3. He's now hitting the queen. Queen comes into c2, and now a move which shows you why rooks belong on open files. Rook into d1, and that is a tremendously strong move. Black's idea, of course, is queen takes g3, and white can't recapture the queen because the knight on f1 is pinned. So rook h3 was played. The queen infiltrates to e1. F takes g4. Rooks belong on open files. Rook f8. Black is getting all his pieces into the game. He's now pounding down on that poor knight on f1 with no less than each of his major pieces. In fact, white's position here is almost laid waste after rook f8. White tried queen b3 check. King went to h8. Bishop comes out to f4. What else? An interference move, but it's only temporary. Knight e2 check. Excellent. King h2. And now white's rook on a1 just disappeared from the board. And essentially, this is a losing position. In chess, when you've got a winning position, you've got to be careful. And, you know, white has a few tricks in this position. What you mustn't do with black in a situation like this is rush. When you've got a totally winning position, do not hurry. There's absolutely no rush to win it. You know, black is now material ahead. If he manages to negotiate the single white threat of h takes g6, he should be winning this position easily. So it's just time to calm down, slow down, and find a decent move. Play safe. And bishop h7 fits the bill completely. Alright, keep calm. White played bishop d2. Queen d1. Well, unfortunately for white, the queens had to come off. Rook came to e3, and now the knight came into d4. A beautiful outpost for that knight. In general, knights like outposts in the centre. Bishop takes a5. Rook d takes f1. Bishop takes f1. Rook takes f1. Strictly speaking, this position is completely resignable for white. I mean, he's a piece and a pawn down. I don't know whether he was in time trouble or he was just sickened by the way the game had gone. People have various reasons for not resigning, but I assure you, against anybody decent, this position is completely gone. So bishop c7 was played. Rook f7. Bishop b8. Well, if bishop takes e5, it really is even simpler now. Knight comes into f3 check, forking bishop and king. Game over. So bishop b8 was played. Rook f8. Bishop c7. Rook e8. Simple chess. King comes up. Now black starts to advance his passed pawn. I'm not sure what could be simpler than that in this position. And it's easy to forget about the bishop on h7, but that bishop is extra. At some point, that bishop's going to come into the game and completely rub out the last remnants of white's position. So I don't really know why white doesn't resign this. I mean, it's torture to play on in a position like this because you just know you're going to lose. Alright, rook g3. He gives up. Bishop takes e4. Rook g5. Thanks a lot. Knight d4. And finally, white decided to give up the ghost. If bishop takes e5, which I presume was the last turkey in the shop, black finishes with a cute three-way knight fork. So rather than see that, white resigned. Okay, I won't say that was an excellent game by Black, but it was certainly very interesting. Black displayed a good idea of dynamics in chess, and a good understanding of where to place your pieces. Short range pieces, action in one area of the board, they like outposts. Long range pieces, they belong on open files. They need to be kept active. They need board wide action. And so with these thoughts, we close the DVD on strategy. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've certainly seen a number of very interesting and dynamic games. You can play through these games several times, and I guarantee you each time you're going to learn a little bit more from them. And we're going to move on now to our next DVD, which will cover the twin ideas of attack and defense. So until then, see you.